All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel for another Dep Dive.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one today. And we always try to bring you guys cases that are really going to kind of make you think a little bit, and this one's really something else.
Yeah, I thought that.
So, December 23rd, 1974. It's Christmas Eve, right? Everybody's running around trying to get those last-minute gifts. You got to get to the mall. You got to brave the crowds. And that's exactly what three young girls were doing in Fort Worth, Texas, at the Seminary South Shopping Center.
Right in that thick of it.
17-year-old Rachel Trillica, her friend 14-year-old Lisa Wilson, and Lisa's 9-year-old neighbor Julie Mosley. They were just out doing a little Christmas shopping, probably having some fun giggling, just a normal day out.
Like so many of us have done.
Exactly. And it's just heartbreaking to think about what happened next, because they just vanished.
Just like that, gone.
Their car was found in the parking lot, still locked presents inside, and for almost 50 years this case has remained unsolved.
It's a mystery that has haunted Fort Worth for a really long time.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that just sticks with you. You think about those families and the not knowing, and it's truly devastating. But what's really interesting is that now in 2025, we're seeing some new leads emerge.
That's right. We have some new information that could potentially shed some light on this case after all these years.
So we're gonna really dig into that today. We're gonna look at the background of the case, the initial investigation, the theories that have been circulating, and of course these groundbreaking new developments.
I think it's important to start with the girls themselves.
Yeah.
Who were Rachel, Lisa, and Julie. What were their lives like before that fateful day?
Right, because I think that helps us to understand the impact of their disappearance. These weren't just names on a missing persons report. These were real people with families and friends and dreams.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Rachel was the oldest at 17. She had recently gotten married about 6 months before she disappeared, and there were some whispers about potential trouble in the marriage. But by all accounts, she was a responsible young woman.
And she was the one who brought Lisa and Julie along that day. Lisa was 14, full of life. She was actually dating Rachel's younger brother.
That's right. So you can see how closely connected these families were.
Yeah, it's a small world. And then there's Julie. She was only 9 years old, just a little girl.
Yeah, the source material describes her as kind of a little sister figure to Lisa and Rachel. She just wanted to tag along with the older girls.
It's heartbreaking to think about them driving to the mall that morning, probably listening to the radio talking about Christmas, just like any other day.
The source tells us that Rachel picked up Lisa and Julie around noon in her Oldsmobile 98.
That's a pretty big car, right?
Yeah, it was, and it ended up becoming kind of a silent witness to this tragedy.
Their families probably waved goodbye, not knowing that it would be the last time they'd see them.
You can only imagine the guilt and regret they must have felt later.
It's just unimaginable, but they get to the mall and everything seems normal, right?
That's right. The mall was packed. It was the Christmas rush. People everywhere. Decorations, music.
You can practically picture it, the sights, the sounds, the smells of the holiday season.
Witnesses reported seeing the girls at various stores inside the mall, like Spencer's Gifts and Woolco.
Oh yeah, Woolco class.
They were carrying shopping bags, so they were definitely buying presents.
But at some point, those sightings stopped and the girls were never seen again.
It's like they just vanished into thin air.
It's around 4 o'clock when their families start to worry.
Right, because they were supposed to be home by then.
So Rachel's husband, Thomas, and Lisa's mother, Judy, they go to the mall to look for them.
You could just picture them frantically searching the crowds, calling out their names.
And then they find Rachel's car in the parking lot, still locked with the presents inside.
That must have been such a chilling discovery.
Yeah, it's like a punch to the gut, because at that point, something's terribly wrong.
The locked car, the present's still there. It really suggests that they didn't leave voluntarily.
Right, it's not like they just decided to run off and go do something else.
And the fact that the car was locked indicates that it was a sudden departure.
So the families called the police, but it being Christmas Eve, the police are understandably swamped with calls.
The source mentions that the police initially suggested that the girls might have run away, which the families immediately rejected.
Yeah, I mean, come on, a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 9-year-old running away together on Christmas Eve, it just doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't.
So as night falls, the mall empties, and the search for the girls begins in earnest.
But there was no trace of them. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle.
It's like they just disappeared without a trace.
It's that lack of an obvious crime scene that really hampered the initial investigation.
So let's talk about that initial investigation. What were the police doing in those first few days?
Well, by Christmas Eve morning, The Fort Worth Police Department had officially launched a missing persons investigation.
But it was the holidays, right? So I imagine things were moving a little slower than usual.
That's right. But they were still interviewing people at the mall, trying to retrace the girl's steps, looking for anyone who might have seen something.
Did they find any leads?
There were a few things that initially seemed promising, but ultimately led nowhere.
Like what?
Well, there was a witness who thought they saw the girls getting into a security guard's car.
Oh, wow. That would have been huge if it was true.
It would have, but the security guard had a solid alibi and was ruled out as a suspect.
So another dead end.
And there was also a report of 3 girls matching the descriptions of Rachel, Lisa, and Julie being seen in a yellow pickup truck speeding away from the mall.
Did they ever find that truck?
No, they never did. And the sighting couldn't be corroborated, so it was another false lead.
It's amazing how many false leads there can be in a case like this. It must have been so frustrating for the families and the investigators.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, this was before the internet and social media. So the police were really relying on old-fashioned detective work, knocking on doors, interviewing people, sifting through tips.
So while the police are doing their thing, the families aren't just sitting around waiting.
No, they were incredibly proactive. They
Mm.
organized their own search parties. They were out there every day looking for their girls.
They were determined to find them.
Absolutely. They refused to give up hope.
And then on Christmas Eve, a letter arrives addressed to Rachel's husband, Thomas.
It was postmarked from Odessa, Texas, which is hundreds of miles away from Fort Worth.
What did the letter say?
It said, I know I'm going to catch it, but we had to get away. We're going to Houston and see you in about a week. The car is in Sears upper lot. Love, Rachel.
Whoa, wait a minute. So she's saying they ran away.
That's what it sounds like, but there was a problem. Rachel's mother was adamant that the handwriting in the letter wasn't her daughter's.
So it was a fake.
That's what most people believed, including the police. But it just raised more questions than it answered.
Like who sent it and why?
Exactly. Was it someone trying to throw the investigation off track, or was it some kind of cruel prank?
It's just so messed up to think about someone doing that to these families while they're already going through so much.
It's a really disturbing thought.
So did the FBI ever get involved in the case?
They did eventually, but even with their resources and expertise, they couldn't crack the case.
It's like whoever took those girls or whatever happened to them, they just vanished without a trace.
The trail went cold, and as the years went by, the case became shrouded in mystery and speculation.
Yeah, it's like whenever you have a case like this where there's so little information, people start coming up with their own theories.
It's human nature to try and make sense of the unexplainable.
So what were some of the theories surrounding the Fort Worth missing trio?
Well, the most common theory was that they were abducted by a stranger.
I mean, that makes sense, right? They were at a crowded mall. It would have been relatively easy for someone to snatch them without being noticed.
And remember, this was the 1970s.
Yeah.
Crime rates were much higher than they are today.
So it was a dangerous time. And there were also those whispers about problems in Rachel's marriage,
Right. Some people theorize that her husband Thomas might have been involved.
even though he was never charged.
That's right. He was questioned extensively by the police, but he always maintained his innocence, and there was never any evidence linking him to the disappearance.
Still, people love to speculate.
And the speculation didn't stop there. Some people even theorized that organized crime might have been involved.
Organized crime like the mob.
Yeah, there were rumors that the girls might have witnessed something they shouldn't have, or maybe they were caught up in some kind of turf war.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does. But again, there's no evidence to support any of these theories.
So basically, it's a giant mystery.
Pretty much.
And to make matters worse, there were all sorts of psychics and armchair detectives coming out of the woodwork,
Oh yeah, you always get that in high-profile missing persons cases.
leading the families on wild goose chases.
It's like adding insult to injury.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking to think about what those families went through all those years of not knowing, all the false hope, all the dead ends.
It's a burden that no one should have to bear.
But now here we are in 2025, and there's a glimmer of hope.
That's right, there have been some significant new developments in the case.
Finally, after all these years, so tell me what's changed.
Well, for starters, a new witness has come forward.
A new witness after all this time.
I know, it's incredible, right? This witness is elderly now, but they claim that they saw Rachel, Lisa, and Julie getting into a blue van near the mall on that day in 1974.
A blue van? Do we know anything else about the van or the driver?
Unfortunately not. The witness doesn't remember any specific details, but it's still a huge lead.
Why do you think they waited so long to come forward?
It's hard to say. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they thought their information wasn't important, or maybe they just blocked it out all these years.
It's possible that they were even threatened.
That's a possibility too. But whatever the reason, they've finally decided to speak up, and that could be a game changer for the investigation.
So what are the police doing with this new information?
They're taking it very seriously. They're going back through old records, trying to track down any blue vans that might have been in the area at the time.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
It is, but they're determined to follow every lead.
And they're not just relying on old-fashioned detective work anymore, right?
No technology has advanced a lot in the past 50 years, and that's playing a big role in the reinvestigation of this case.
Like how?
Oh, for one thing, they're re-examining the fingerprints that were found in Rachel's car.
You mean they still have those fingerprints after all these years?
They do, and with today's technology, they might be able to get a match that they couldn't get back in the 70s.
That's amazing.
And they're also re-examining the DNA from that letter that was sent to Rachel's husband.
Oh, yeah, that mysterious letter.
Right, if they can extract a DNA profile from the letter, they might be able to identify the sender.
That would be huge.
It could finally answer some of the questions that have plagued this case for so long.
So we've got a new witness, we've got advanced forensic technology. What else is new?
Well, they're also using artificial intelligence to create age-progressed images of the girls.
Age-progressed images.
Yeah, basically they're using computer software to show what Rachel, Lisa, and Julie might look like today if they were still alive.
That's both fascinating and kind of heartbreaking.
It is, but it could also be helpful in generating new leads. Someone might see one of these images and recognize one of the girls.
It's a long shot, but it's worth a try.
Absolutely.
So it really feels like we're at a turning point in this case. After all these years, there's finally some real hope that we might get some answers.
I agree. It's a very exciting time for anyone who's been following this case.
But I think it's important to remember the human side of this story. You know, the families of those girls have been living with this nightmare for 5 decades.
Absolutely. The impact on the families has been unimaginable.
Can you tell us a little bit about their stories?
Well, Rachel's mother, Fran, dedicated her entire life to searching for her daughter. She never gave up hope until she passed away in 2017.
Oh, wow. That's just so sad.
It is. She spent every day of her life hoping and praying that her daughter would come home.
And what about Lisa's mother, Judy?
Judy still holds an annual vigil for the girls every December 23rd. She lights candles and prays for their safe return.
It's just heartbreaking to think about the pain and the uncertainty they've all had to endure.
And Julie's parents are still alive. They're elderly now, but they haven't forgotten their little girl.
It's amazing how resilient the human spirit can be, but it's also a reminder of the devastating toll that cases like this take on families and communities.
Absolutely. The Fort Worth community has never forgotten Rachel, Lisa, and Julie. There's a reward fund that's grown to $25,000, and people still talk about the case to this day.
It's a case that has touched so many lives.
It really has, and it's also led to some important changes in the way missing persons cases are handled in Texas.
Really, what kind of changes?
Well, there's now a much greater emphasis on quick response times from law enforcement, and there's also more support available for families of missing persons.
It's good to hear at least something positive has come out of this tragedy.
It is, but it doesn't erase the pain and the loss that these families have suffered.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that the Fort Worth missing trio case is one of the most perplexing and heartbreaking mysteries of our time.
I agree. It's a case that has captivated the public's imagination for decades.
And while we still don't have all the answers, these new leads offer a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we're finally getting closer to the truth.
That's the hope that keeps us going.
Yeah, it would be incredible if after all these years we could finally bring some closure to the families of Rachel, Lisa, and Julie.
It would be a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of never giving up hope.
So what do you think, guys? Could 2025 be the year that this case is finally solved?
We can only hope.
Yeah, but even if it isn't, it's important that we keep their memories alive and that we never stop searching for the truth.
That's right. These were real people with real lives, and they deserve justice.
So if you have any information about the Fort Worth missing trio, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please come forward.
You could hold the key to solving this case.
And who knows, maybe your tip could be the one that finally brings these girls home.
We can only hope.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more true crime content.
We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.